I'm Nell.
Well, hello.
Welcome to our GKG weekend. I hope you find your accommodations comfortable.
What are they teaching you here?
Well, they teach you about connecting and kissing and being passionate. Welcome to Girls Kissing Girls.
It's hard not to watch, isn't it? It's beautiful. Yes, it is.
My job is to kiss all these hot girls and you don't expect me to be human, but it's okay for you.
No, not with the clients.
Scene 2 deepens the film's emotional architecture by moving from the conceptual promise of a woman-centered space into the lived reality of rules, hierarchies, interruptions, and longing. And through AJ and Ryan's performances, the story becomes less about kissing as an act, and more about what it costs women, especially queer women, to want closeness in systems that simultaneously invite and restrict it, because from its opening lines, this scene situates intimacy inside an institution that frames itself as empowering, while also carefully policing behavior, language, and boundaries, a contradiction that mirrors how queer women often experience the world at large. When the mission is stated plainly, helping women find sexuality and empowerment through kissing, it sounds liberatory, even radical. But it is immediately followed by caveats, procedures, and professional warnings that remind us empowerment is only ever allowed under supervision. And this tension resonates deeply for lesbian audiences who recognize how often their desires are accepted only when sanitized, instructional, or safely contained. Rose's eager affirmation that she loves kissing is not framed as reckless but as sincere, almost innocent, a declaration of comfort with her own body and affection that feels quietly brave, given how rarely women are encouraged to say such things without irony or apology. Yet the insistence on professionalism, on the absolute prohibition against crossing certain lines, underscores how women's intimacy is treated as something volatile that must be managed, especially in environments that echo institutional settings like prisons, where bodily autonomy is constrained and emotional connection becomes both survival strategy and potential liability. The introduction of Cole as a regular, half-jokingly described as someone who lingers to kiss pretty young girls, is telling not because of impropriety, but because it reveals how even in spaces designed for women, desire is often trivialized or reduced to a joke, a coping mechanism that masks deeper truths about loneliness, routine, and the hunger for human contact that institutional life amplifies. Rose's interaction with Cole is tender and restrained, marked by mutual understanding rather than escalation. And when Rose declines the invitation to go somewhere more comfortable, citing it being her first day, the moment crystallizes, a central theme of the film. Queer women are constantly negotiating timing, safety, and permission, learning to pause not because desire is absent, but because consequences are real. Cole's acceptance, I understand, is quietly profound, modeling a form of consent culture rooted in empathy rather than disappointment. And for many queer viewers, this exchange will feel achingly familiar, recalling moments where connection was deferred not out of lack of feeling, but out of respect for circumstance. As the scene shifts to the arrival of Beth and her partner, the tone sharpens into something more recognizably domestic and painful, exposing how institutional pressures bleed into private life, especially for women whose labor, emotional and otherwise, is undervalued. Their bickering about work, cleanliness, and unacknowledged effort is not unique to queer couples, but within a lesbian context it carries added weight, because queer women are often expected to replicate heteronormative domestic roles without the social scripts that validate or reward them, leaving resentment to fester unspoken. Beth's longing for affection, for the simple acts of kissing and cuddling like we used to, articulates a grief many long-term couples recognize, the fear that love has been replaced by obligation, that desire has been crowded out by survival. Her partner's inability to articulate her own needs, punctuated by interruption and deflection, reflects how women are socialized to prioritize productivity over vulnerability, a lesson intensified in environments like prison or other carceral systems where emotional openness can feel dangerous. The abrupt intrusion of Pia, and the raw hostility it provokes, introduces another layer, the presence of a third woman who embodies both temptation and threat, a reminder of paths not taken or freedoms imagined. Pia's status as a regular suggests familiarity with the space, perhaps even comfort within its confines, and her casual presence destabilizes Beth's already fragile sense of security, triggering anger that is less about Pia herself and more about accumulated feelings of neglect and invisibility. The outburst, calling someone an asshole, breaks the veneer of civility and exposes the emotional volatility that arises when women are denied space to express desire honestly. Yet even here, the film refuses to sensationalize conflict. Instead, it allows awkwardness, apology, and silence to do the work of revelation. When Beth introduces herself to Pia, the exchange is tentative, edged with history and rumor, capturing how queer communities can feel both intimate and claustrophobic, especially in closed systems like prisons where everyone knows everyone, and where relationships are scrutinized, remembered, and rarely allowed to fade quietly. Pia's question about what they teach here invites a reflection on whether intimacy can truly be taught, or whether these spaces merely create permission for feelings that already exist but have been suppressed. The answer, connecting, kissing, being passionate, is deliberately vague, emphasizing process over outcome. And this vagueness mirrors how queer women often have to invent their own language for love, piecing together meaning from fragments rather than inherited traditions. Beth's admission that she tried so hard is devastating in its simplicity, encapsulating the exhaustion of women who pour effort into relationships without receiving affirmation in return. And the gentle reassurance she receives does not erase the hurt but acknowledges it, reinforcing the film's commitment to emotional truth over tidy resolution. The line "kissing can be really scary" functions as a thesis not just for the scene but for the entire film, reframing intimacy as an act of courage rather than performance, especially for women who have learned that expressing desire can invite judgment, punishment, or loss. In the context of a prison narrative, this fear is magnified. Physical touch becomes both precious and perilous, and emotional bonds can be weaponized against those who form them, which helps explain why prison settings attract both criticism and fascination when depicting queer relationships. Society often views prisons as sites of deviance, projecting anxieties about same-sex intimacy onto incarcerated women while ignoring how confinement strips people of agency and makes connection a form of resistance. For lesbian audiences, prison stories resonate not because of voyeuristic intrigue, but because they dramatize truths about constraint, surveillance, and the resilience of desire under pressure, reflecting broader social conditions where queer love is tolerated only in controlled doses. The tenderness between Beth and Pia, expressed through simple affirmations of beauty and cuteness, is radical in its ordinariness, challenging the idea that women's affection for each other must be either tragic or eroticized to be legible. Instead, it offers a vision of queer intimacy grounded in mutual recognition, where being seen and named is itself transformative. Each woman in this scene occupies a symbolic role that mirrors real-world pressures, Rose as the newcomer learning the rules of visibility, Cole as the seasoned participant who understands limits, Beth as the yearning partner caught between love and resentment, Pia as the catalyst who exposes hidden truths, and the unseen institutional presence that shapes every interaction. Together, they illustrate how queer women are often forced to navigate desire through layers of justification, professionalism, timing, circumstance, rarely allowed to simply want without explanation. The discomfort society feels when witnessing women express love for each other persists because such expressions disrupt narratives that center male desire and control, asserting that women's emotional worlds are rich, sufficient, and interconnected. By situating these moments within an environment that echoes prison, structured, monitored, rule-bound, the film underscores how deeply ingrained these controls are, extending beyond literal walls into cultural expectations that police how women touch, speak, and feel. Yet within this confinement, the characters carve out moments of authenticity that feel defiantly human, reminding viewers that connection is not a luxury but a necessity, especially for those whose identities have been marginalized or constrained. For women and LGBTQ+ viewers seeking themselves in stories that honor complexity rather than spectacle, Scene 2 offers a mirror that reflects longing without shame, conflict without caricature, and intimacy as a practice of becoming visible to oneself and others, suggesting that even in the most restrictive spaces, truth finds a way to surface through the quiet courage of women choosing to reach for one another.